Okay, welcome back. So now we get to discuss some of the areas where I know everyone is interested in digging in a bit deeper. This group will be focusing on the waste and consumption. So as Megan talked about in the first part of this webinar series, roughly 40% of the greenhouse gas emissions in King County can be attributed to both food through waste and consumption and goods such as clothing and electronics. And she shared that information in the pie chart based on the King County consumption-based emissions inventory. And she made a comment about this makes the case for more programs and policies that can focus on food waste reductions and promoting reuse of items and or repair cafes for clothing and small household items. So with that, we're going to start with this facilitation. We're going to be keeping a timer because we're on kind of a strict schedule to meet up with everyone again. We'll allow about 10 minutes for each, roughly 10 minutes for each kind of comment. So question one, what are 2 or 3 most important issues or concerns related to waste to consumption for Issaquah and why? And again, it looks like our comment isn't working. So we did a good job speaking up and being kind, letting others speak. So we'll keep going with that.
All right, well, this is Connie. I can start. We're getting worse with our garbage use rather than better. And one of the things that we can do about this is we could actually create code requiring garbage service pickup, recycling, and composting, period. It would not be an option. They do this in San Francisco with the same company that we use here.
Can I ask a question? I probably should know this, but does Issaquah have a food to landfill ban? Do you have anything enacted that makes it mandatory to compost food waste?
We do not.
Oh, yeah,
this is Connie. I'm sorry.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of. We do go into businesses, Brian, myself, and another coworker, Julie, and we make sure that we are wanting to make sure that they are composting as much as they can. That's gotcha. Right now what we're doing.
Well, and I have found, we have a warehouse in San Francisco and downtown, and we are highly regulated in that particular city, which I could see from a city standpoint makes sense, but from a business standpoint, it is a very, very expensive endeavor and it's very labor intensive. But I feel that there is something that would be reasonable about saying we have to try to make this something that we want to require, but maybe not to the level that San Francisco does, because it's really unattainable what they're asking from us. But I feel like if we're not going to have some sort of legislation pointing to whether it's an all-out ban or it's some sort of percentage regulation, something that would at least guide businesses in Issaquah to start to do that as a regular, as opposed to something that may be just a special event.
Right. This is Gwen. Policy supports and incentives for both businesses, restaurants, schools, and individuals is what I think would be really critical.
Right.
So this is Connie again. For example, I was a tenant long-term, and our landlord did not like anything having to do with composting, and recycling and garbage were super expensive. And so he just didn't do it because he didn't have to. And then there was no enforcement of actually legitimate use for the commercial facilities anyway. So what we got a lot of was rat infestations instead. So unless you make it free and the city somehow supports that, you are gonna, or you make it so that they simply must do it, I don't think that asking gently is gonna get you very far.
No.
Connie, if I could kind of speak to that, just coming from experience, with Evan, Julie, and I doing a lot of business inspections where a lot of the can someone unmute or mute? I'm hearing a lot of background noise. Okay, all right, better. That I will say that we have our stormwater code, and when we're out doing these business inspections, if we see a business that isn't meeting their requirements in terms of illicit discharge and or keeping up with stormwater code, then we can in fact take enforcement. Of course, that's the last route that we want to take. But I will say that us being kind of the the face for the city and working with businesses and restaurants, that we are certainly looking at that, and there is code and enforcement mechanisms to basically get people and businesses back into compliance. So it isn't directly related to solid waste, quote unquote, but we do have our stormwater code that backs us up.
Can I add one thing? This is Karen Dawson with Cedar Grove, and I had just 2 comments on that topic. One is that with embedded rates where recycling and compost are free, contamination increases. So essentially it can be used as kind of like an additional garbage can for people who, aren't invested in the they didn't want to subscribe, right? We forced them to subscribe, or we kind of provided it at free charge. And so in the cities where there's embedded rates like that, where composting and recycling are essentially underwritten by the garbage fee, and it doesn't, the resident doesn't see the true cost, we do see a lot of increased contamination. And so one other comment regarding waste diversion for the city to consider is addressing contamination at the curbside. So when the recycling and compost carts are contaminated with things that cannot be recycled or composted respectively, those materials are not truly diverted and still wind up in the landfill, even though they're kind of counted as diverted from the landfill in terms of like how the city and county record that information. So the garbage is placed in the wrong container. A great deal of labor and direct cost is spent by processors to remove those materials. In the case of recycling, that would be the Recology at the MRF, and in the case of the compost, that would be at Cedar Grove, where we pay. We actually have like new employees that are dedicated to that waste stream. So we have building monitors and people are actually manually taking people's garbage out of the yard waste. And so, we would be happy to, always tour Issaquah City Council or staff, et cetera, at our Maple Valley facility to see that. But that is one thing. Kirkland has a great program. I'm happy to send the info, but they do have a great program on where they partner with their hauler to monitor bins at the curbside.
I think that in Seattle they have fines for people putting things in the wrong places. So if you're putting your yard waste and adding garbage to it, or if you're using food waste and putting it into the wrong container or into your landfill, then you can be fined for that. It hasn't always been successful. It's been kind of up and down, but I think kind of moving in that direction where people can't reduce the landfill, that there is maybe larger fees for larger containers, and that maybe there's some kind of requirement for not putting more in landfill, not putting food waste, a fine, I mean, not a requirement. And then a requirement that multifamily buildings and commercial buildings do have compost and recycling. They don't all.
Thank you, Candace. We're out of time. Going on to the next question, unless someone has one last comment to make.
This is Mina with Cascade Water Alliance. I have 2 quick separate thoughts. One on recycling and waste reduction. If Issaquah doesn't already have requirements for new development for multifamily and commercial to include space for recycling and composting, that's something that you might want to think about. having worked in Seattle, I know that was a big issue there. Just, it's hard enough with existing buildings, but there's some opportunities with new development. And then in terms of waste reduction, so we know that waste reduction is the first thing we should be thinking about versus recycling and composting. And, we're a consumption culture. We buy stuff and then we throw it away. And so we talked about education at the last session. And I think one way to slowly begin to change the culture is through the kids and education. And I know I've got 2 teenage kids and they are causing us to change our behavior all the time because they're really passionate about trying to save resources and the environment. And they are very, very influential with us. So just investing more in education and getting to our kids before they become like us.
Oh, thank you for that. Okay, question 2. Brian, you want to read that or do you want me to?
Yeah, sure. And so we touched a little bit on, over the last question, but second question is, what kinds of things can be done to overcome potential barriers and make progress on this particular topic of waste and consumption?
All right, this is Connie. I'll start again. So, for example, and the Issaquah Farmers Market has rules that basically say you cannot sell used products at the farmers market, and they allow the crafting section but nothing used. Recently the city of Issaquah has stopped having its basically community flea market, which was a nice location for people who didn't want to do garage sales to all come together and sell their stuff cheaply and buy somebody else's stuff more cheaply. Then many other cities have sort of your free-for-all garbage day where you put your things in the trash and people go around and you switch your trash to try to keep things in homes and out of the dump or out of the garbage stream. So as a culture, we have set up our city to be sales tax based on selling new and shiny things, and we have created rules and regulations to not allow easy use of used product. And so it's easier to throw it away or donate it and not just find a user. Donation at least is better than the garbage.
Really quick, Evan, I think this meeting was booked till 1 and I have a 1 o'clock. It's supposed to end at 1, right? And it's 1:02.
It's supposed to, our session's done at 1:15.
Correct.
And then we'll go back to the main group for a discussion.
Oh, the agenda said till 1 that Megan sent. Okay. Okay, well, I'll pop off, but I will submit my comments in writing to Evan and Brian after the meeting.
All right, yeah, thanks, Karen.
Great,
okay,
thank you.
One of the things that I've noticed is that there's some confusion with the public, and I think if we can have it be really clear what our guidelines are, that we're using the same colored containers. I know some of it was we were changing haulers and we had different recyclers, but people are moving here and it was brown where they came from and it's green here. And the more we can make it easy for people when they arrive in Issaquah to understand what the expectations are and how to make it as easy as possible to facilitate that will help a lot. Because I used to run salmon days and we would have compost, recyclable, and garbage. And if it wasn't easy, or if the containers were a different color than where they came from, it was all contaminated, and it was such a waste of effort to not be able to be successful and fruitful in those efforts. So however we can make it really easy for people to understand, really plain, really consistent, will have better opportunities at success.
Well, nobody jumped in, so go ahead. Whoever that was.
I've had a hand raised that I didn't get called on, so.
Oh, go ahead, Linda.
I'd like to focus on the consumerism, and again, recycling is great, but it's not the solution. It's what happened after we create the waste. So extended producer responsibility, where businesses, if they create it, they make it, they pay for the disposal instead of the taxpayers. And so I think that's a really good model for Issaquah to adopt and take the burden off of the taxpayers in the city to fund these purposely manufactured products that are difficult to manage in our landfills or composting or whatnot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Looks like Melina has her hand raised, and as well, Connie, I believe you had a comment too. Let's go to Connie first.
So we had a thing in recycling where we went from having to separate all of our own garbage, and then we were educated that everything got to be mixed and they separated it somewhere else. So I think we need a re-education program and to make people responsible for their garbage again, because I think most people heard the message of you toss it in and they'll figure it out. So it's too complicated, and I often sit at garbage and go, well, I don't really know where my wire hanger with my cardboard base go, right? And so the education needs to be, echoing someone else, so simple, and otherwise we should just say I guess that's garbage. And I don't know how to solve that one.
You muted yourself, Connie. Oh, nope, not anymore. You're back. Oh, you muted yourself again.
I was done.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Melina?
So I really agree with Linda about the producer responsibility. And since most things are manufactured nationwide, that I think, and I know that there's a lot of efforts going on throughout the region, but this is where regionalism and partnerships, I think, really are necessary. I'm now in the water business, and one of the things that we have been trying to get people to do is stop drinking bottled water and just drinking the pristine water that comes out of the tap. It not only costs less, it's actually better quality water, and it produces less waste. So going back to the theme of trying to make things easy for people, if there are things that we can get people to do to just take incremental steps to change their behavior, and switching from bottled water to tap water is one really simple thing that they can do. It just sets the ball in motion to help them make bigger changes. So I love what I heard last time about making things easy and just slow change, because it took us a long time to get here, and it's going to take us a long time to change our behavior.
Yeah, thank you, Melina. So we're out of time for this topic, unless someone has one quick last minute.
This is Candace. I just like to say that there are several countries in Europe that have actually almost zero waste to landfill. And we might study some of those to see how, I'm sure some of it was maybe products going back to the producer, as Linda suggested, but also a lot of education of the public, and seeing how they accomplish that might be helpful.
Thank you for that.
Okay, our third and final discussion topic on our breakout.
Okay. So the last question is, if we came back in a year, what might you see that would indicate that things are starting to move in the right direction?
I could think, I think we would need to see the city making policy changes regarding products that they purchase that aren't easily recycled or disposed of. There's just, computers, for instance, you can buy green computers that are built so that they're less toxic materials on the upcycling and then at the disposal end. So I think cities need to lead the businesses and their community as by example.
Well, this is Connie. So we do track our garbage and our success rate in garbage, whatever that is exactly. So I think we need to set goals, and we need to have the people responsible for getting us to the goal. So we let them know what the goal is, and then we tell them how we're doing at the end of a year. And that would be whatever those standards are that we already have and we have a baseline for the past.
Connie, can I piggyback off that? That actually is a really good strategy that we use here at Costco. We have a company established diversion rate for all of our waste at 80% to either recycle or compost. And as a company, when we make that out there for everybody has a buy-in, and then we take it all the way down to the location level. We actually have a diversion rate percentage available to the individual operator. So every single location in our company has that as a metric that they have to uphold in order for them to meet their baseline targets. And without that, they just would have no idea. And I don't know if this is even feasible, but we actually do waste audits at our locations. So we will just do a surprise audit. We'll pull their dumpster away, and we'll have 5 or 6 tons of trash. And we go through that item by item, and we measure what they've thrown in that should be recycled or composted. And then we give them that report. And it's a very eye-opening piece, so people can see how much they've contributed to just not paying attention to what the expectation is. So I don't know how feasible that is for a city to do samples or do something that could be published for people to see that live in the city or do business in the city, but it's always a very good educational tool for us.
I have a question. This is Trish. Lisa,
yeah.
Do you guys kind of make it like a game or a competition between the locations?
Well, at Costco, everything is a competition. Our operators are extremely competitive. So whether it's sales or shrink or D&D or anything that they can measure against one another, it's huge. So when we put that diversion goal out there, everybody's like, oh, I've got to beat this guy down the street because I'm way better than him, because they all know each other. So yeah, very much so. Everything is driven by competition within the operators.
I think one of the things that I'd like to see is following on our line of education, so that at the schools, I've been a waste auditor, during Earth Week, and seeing the kids step up to the challenge, but have it be every day and have it be embraced, because they're the ones going home and insisting their parents do it. So making sure that we've got great implementation at our schools so the kids are learning it and integrating it into their normal lives.
Just want to tag on to Lisa said, kudos to you for doing that. And in Hawaii, we did that with our council members and our mayor to see what was in their waste, and it was pretty revealing. So.
Thank you. Gwen, did you have a comment?
Yes, I think related about the schools and even with business, I feel like leveraging new partnerships. So the anchor businesses in town and the schools, there are also, so I'm university based, there are opportunities to partner with other institutions that can provide both funding for initiatives, but evaluation, policy support, best practices, and yeah.
So we have about 3 minutes left in this session, or 4 minutes before we will leave this and rejoin the main group. We can keep talking about this last question, or we can kind of revisit the first question again. Just kind of depends on what the group wants to do.
Can I throw in one more bullet? That I'd love to come back in a year and see less litter. You know, I work at the salmon hatchery and we see all kinds of things washing down the stream and along the banks. And if you go into a parking lot at a store, what people feel comfortable just dropping in the parking lot, that should have been in our history. That shouldn't be something we're still talking about.
Yeah, unfortunately, Recology was not able to join us today to kind of speak to some of these items. Not blaming litter on Recology, but just you know, I think they could provide a lot of useful input to a lot of these areas. They had a last minute item that came up and they were unable to meet.
So, this is Connie. Can I do a quick minor story and add? Not too long ago, some students from Issaquah High School came passionately to City Council and said, "We want to make plastic straws illegal in Issaquah." And the City Council sent them back to their school, and our gal Mary Jo DeBeck, in theory, created something. So the city does not seem to have a pathway to take people's passions on climate action or waste and turn them into a larger reality. They turn them back and take their energy and make something smaller. So I would like to see some established pathway. If someone gets impassioned, that they can do great things and create brilliant ideas, because that felt like squashing these young people instead of giving them the tools they needed to be extraordinary.
All right. So does anyone have any other comments? It can be about any of the things we discussed in this breakout. All right. Oh, yes, someone?
Well, yeah, well, you know, it's too late now, and you know, it's all going to come out in the wash. We didn't really talk about carbon emissions, but I guess it's a give me with landfills and methane production, all that kind of stuff.
Yes, yeah. Okay, well, everyone, I'm going to end this meeting. Please cancel this meeting and then go back to our original meeting room. Again, the chat function isn't working, so I can't post a link, but it all worked out last time. So let's do the same thing we did last time.